Ever try to stream your favorite show and the Wi-Fi just keeps buffering?
Ugh,
Infuriating, isn't it?
the worst.
Well, today we're diving deep into the world of wireless networking.
Okay.
To understand how it all works and maybe pick up some Wi-Fi wisdom to impress our friends with.
Oh, fun.
We're using the latest edition, hot off the presses in 2025, of CompTIA Network Plus Guide to Networks by Jill West.
Nice!
By the end of this, you'll have a solid understanding of how those wireless signals travel, the different Wi-Fi standards out there, and even some tips on how to fix those pesky slow connections.
Sounds like a plan. Let's decode the mysteries of Wi-Fi.
All right, so first off, wireless signals, they aren't magic, right? They travel through the air as radio waves. But I'm curious, how do they all fit in the air without getting jumbled up?
Good question. It all has to do with something called the wireless spectrum,
Okay.
a range of frequencies specifically for wireless communication. And the crazy thing is, this spectrum is massive. It goes all the way from 9 kilohertz to 300 gigahertz.
Wow.
That's a lot of space for signals to travel.
That's a bigger range than I ever imagined. But I've heard of this thing called a collision. What happens there?
Collisions are basically what happens when multiple devices try to use the same frequency at the same time.
Oh.
Their signals clash, and it's like a traffic jam in the air,
Uh-huh.
causing slowdowns and lag. You know, like when you're trying to stream and it keeps buffering?
Yes.
That could be a collision.
So that's what's happening. It's like everyone trying to squeeze through the same door at once. So how do we avoid these Wi-Fi traffic jams?
There are some clever techniques for that. Two of the main ones are FHSS and DSSS.
Okay.
Think of FHSS, frequency hopping spread spectrum, like playing musical chairs. The signal keeps switching between different frequencies,
Right.
so it's less likely to run into interference.
That makes sense.
Bluetooth actually uses this, which is pretty cool.
So it's like a signal playing hide and seek with interference. What about DSSS?
DSSS, or direct sequence spread spectrum, is what Wi-Fi uses. It's more like spreading out the signal over a wider range of frequencies simultaneously. Think of it like a parade marching down multiple lanes of a highway. This way, even if there's some interference on one part of the frequency band, other parts of the signal can still get through.
Okay, so that's how our Wi-Fi manages to stay relatively stable, even with all the devices around us. Speaking of Wi-Fi, I always hear about these different Wi-Fi standards like 802.11x or 802.11ac. What's the deal with those?
Those numbers actually represent different generations of Wi-Fi technology. Think of them like upgrades.
Okay.
Each new standard brings faster speeds, better range, and improved features. It's the reason we can now stream 4K videos and connect tons of smart home devices without everything slowing to a crawl.
So upgrading to a router with the latest standard could really make a difference in my Wi-Fi speed. It's good to know.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm always a bit baffled about how the data actually travels between devices. It's all invisible.
Well, it's all about these things called 802.11 frames. They're like little data packets traveling back and forth between your devices and the router.
Okay.
And they have this clever system called CSMA/CA, Carrier Sense Multiple Access with Collision Avoidance, to keep everything organized.
Wait, hold on. How does this CSMA/CA thing actually work? Is it some kind of software on my router?
Think of it like a polite rule everyone on the network follows.
Okay.
Before a device sends a frame, it listens to see if anyone else is talking.
Uh-huh.
If the coast is clear, it sends its data. If someone else is transmitting, it waits a random amount of time before trying again. This helps avoid those collisions and keeps the data flowing smoothly.
So it's like a digital version of taking turns in a conversation.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. But what about when I'm trying to connect to a Wi-Fi network? How does my laptop know which one is mine?
That's where the SID comes in. That's basically the name of your Wi-Fi network. Your device scans for available networks, looking for the one with your specific SID. And you know how you're always told to change the default SID for security reasons?
Yeah.
That's to make it harder for unauthorized people to guess the name of your network and potentially gain access.
Okay, that makes sense. So my device is like a bloodhound sniffing out the right Wi-Fi scent.
Yeah.
But isn't there more to it than just finding the network? There's got to be some sort of handshake involved, right?
You're exactly right. There's a whole process called association.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Your device sends a request to the access point, like knocking on the door.
Uh-huh.
The access point checks your credentials, basically your Wi-Fi password.
Right.
And if everything matches up, it grants you access to the network.
So it's like showing your ID at the door to get into the Wi-Fi party.
Yep.
But now that we've talked about connecting to a single network, how does this work when we have multiple access points, like in a big office building?
That's where things get even more interesting. We have different ways to set up these networks called wireless topologies. You've got your basic setup with a single access point, like what most people have at home.
Right.
But for larger spaces, we use something called an ESS, or Extended Service Set. Imagine multiple access points strategically placed throughout the building, all working together like a team.
So instead of just one router, we have a whole network of them, all covering different areas. But how does my device know which one to connect to as I move around?
That's where roaming comes in. Your device constantly evaluates the signal strength from nearby access points, and it seamlessly switches to the strongest one as you move.
Wow.
Think of it like your phone automatically switching between cell towers as you drive. You don't even notice it happening.
That is pretty seamless. I never really thought about how that worked before, but I've also heard of this thing called band steering. What's that all about?
Band steering.
Yeah.
It's a smart feature that helps optimize your Wi-Fi performance. You see, modern routers can broadcast on 2 different frequency bands, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz.
Okay.
Think of 2.4 gigahertz as a reliable workhorse. It has good range, but can be a bit slow.
Right.
5 gigahertz is like a speed demon. It's much faster, but has a shorter range and struggles with obstacles like walls.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. So how does band steering play into this?
Well, band steering acts like an intelligent traffic cop, directing devices to the best band for their needs. If a device is close to the router and supports 5 gigahertz, it'll be steered to that band for maximum speed. If it's further away or doesn't support 5 gigahertz, it'll be directed to the 2.4 gigahertz band for better coverage.
So it's like having a personal Wi-Fi valet, making sure my devices are always in the right spot.
Exactly.
That's pretty neat. But let's be honest, one of the biggest concerns with Wi-Fi is security, right? I mean, we've all heard stories about hackers and data breaches. How do we actually make sure our Wi-Fi is secure?
Security is absolutely crucial, and luckily there have been major advancements in Wi-Fi security over the years. Remember WEP, the old standard we talked about?
Yeah, vaguely.
It's like a flimsy lock. Hackers can break through it pretty easily.
Yeah, I've heard WP is about as effective as a screen door on a submarine.
Pretty much, yeah.
So what do we use now to keep our data safe?
The good news is we've moved on to much stronger security standards like WPA2 and WPA3.
Okay.
Think of WPA2 like a bank vault door.
Right.
It uses super strong encryption to keep your data safe from prying eyes. And WPA3, the latest standard, is even more robust, adding extra layers of protection like SAE, which helps prevent hackers from guessing your password, even with those super fast computers they use.
So WPA3 is like Fort Knox for my Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
But I've also heard about these other security tips like hiding your SSID or using MMAX filtering. Do those actually help?
While they can add a small layer of security, they're not foolproof. Hiding your SSID is like trying to hide your house by taking its number off the door. It might deter casual snoopers, but determined attackers can still find it. And MASC filtering, which lets you specify which devices can connect based on their unique hardware address, can be a pain to manage, especially if you have lots of devices coming and going.
So it's like having a guest list at your Wi-Fi party.
Right.
Sounds like a lot of work to keep track of. What about those really scary Wi-Fi threats I hear about, like evil twins?
Yeah.
That sounds like something straight out of a spy movie.
Evil twins are definitely something to be aware of, especially on public Wi-Fi. Imagine you're at a coffee shop and you see a network called Free Coffee Shop Wi-Fi.
Right.
It might actually be a fake network set up by an attacker to steal your information.
Right.
Always be cautious about connecting to public Wi-Fi, and if you do, make sure you're using a VPN for an extra layer of protection.
So it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, disguised as a harmless Wi-Fi network. But even with all these security measures, sometimes things just go wrong. What are some of the most common Wi-Fi problems people encounter?
One of the most frustrating is, of course, no connection at all. You try to connect, but nothing happens. Often it's something simple like being out of range of the router or accidentally trying to connect to the wrong network.
Yeah, I've done that before. So many Wi-Fi networks all crammed together, it's easy to mix them up.
For sure. Other times it's a password issue. Maybe you recently changed it and forgot to update it on your device.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the router itself acting up, like that old computer that needs a good reboot every now and then.
So the good old turn it off and on again trick works for routers too.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll have to remember that.
Yeah. A simple restart can often work wonders.
Hmm.
But if you've tried all the basics and still can't connect, it might be time to delve into your router settings or even consider resetting it to factory defaults.
And then there's the other classic Wi-Fi woe, slow connections.
Oh, yes.
It's like watching a movie in slow motion. Talk about a test of patience. What usually causes that?
Slow connections can be a real puzzle to solve because so many things can contribute to it.
Yeah.
One of the most common is interference from other devices like cordless phones, microwaves, even baby monitors.
Really?
They operate on similar frequencies and can disrupt your Wi-Fi signal.
Wait, so my microwave could be the reason my Netflix keeps buffering.
It's possible.
I'll have to investigate that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking. Sometimes simply moving the router or the interfering device to a different location can make a big difference.
Okay.
And speaking of location, distance and obstacles play a big role too. Walls, furniture, even large appliances can weaken your Wi-Fi signal, leading to slower speeds.
So the further I am from the router, the weaker the signal.
Exactly.
Makes sense. But what about those Wi-Fi extenders I see advertised? Can those help boost the signal in those far-flung corners of the house?
Extenders can definitely help. They basically act as relays, grabbing the signal from your router and rebroadcasting it to those hard-to-reach areas. It's like having a Wi-Fi booster shot for your network. But sometimes the problem isn't the signal itself, but how it's being shared. Remember those Wi-Fi channels we talked about?
Yeah, you mentioned them earlier when we were talking about how devices avoid collisions.
Right. Well, if your router is on the same channel as a neighboring network, it can lead to congestion and slower speeds, kind of like two lanes of traffic trying to merge into one.
Okay.
A Wi-Fi analyzer app can show you which channels are being used and help you pick a less crowded one for your router.
So it's like finding a clear lane on the Wi-Fi highway.
Yeah.
That's a great tip. But what if I've checked all those things and my Wi-Fi is still sluggish? Is it possible that my router is just overwhelmed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you have a ton of devices connected to your Wi-Fi simultaneously, they can hog all the bandwidth and slow things down for everyone. It's like having too many people trying to drink from the same water fountain.
Right.
Eventually, the pressure drops. Upgrading to a more powerful router or even limiting the number of devices connected at once can sometimes help.
So it's like having a bigger water fountain for all my thirsty devices.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But sometimes the slow speeds aren't even the Wi-Fi's fault, right?
Right.
I mean, if your internet connection coming into the house is slow, then your Wi-Fi will be slow too.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes the bottleneck is your internet service provider, ISP. You can contact them to see if there are any known outages or speed issues in your area.
Okay.
And while you're at it, it's always a good idea to check your router's firmware. That's the software that controls its operations. Just like your computer needs software updates, so does your router. These updates often include performance improvements and security patches.
Okay, so it's like giving my router a tune-up to keep it running smoothly and safely. But what about those times when the Wi-Fi connection just randomly drops out? That drives me crazy. What causes that?
Intermittent connectivity can be one of the most frustrating problems to diagnose because there are so many potential culprits.
Yes, I know.
Sometimes it's those pesky interfering devices we talked about earlier.
Right.
They can cause temporary disruptions in your Wi-Fi signal, leading to dropouts. Other times it's a signal strength issue. Maybe you're moving around the house and the signal is fluctuating as you go in and out of range of the router.
Yeah, I've noticed that before. It's like my Wi-Fi signal is playing hide and seek with me.
Exactly.
So moving the router or using a Wi-Fi extender could help with that too.
Absolutely. And don't forget those Wi-Fi analyzer apps we talked about. They can show you the signal strength in different areas of your house and help you identify any weak spots.
Right.
But sometimes the problem lies with the router itself. If it's overheating or malfunctioning, it can cause those annoying dropouts.
So if my router is feeling a little hot under the collar, that could be a sign of trouble.
It's worth considering. Make sure your router has good ventilation and isn't crammed into a tight space where it can't breathe. And sometimes, just like with connection issues, a simple restart can help clear up those glitches.
Okay, so restarting the router is like first aid for Wi-Fi woes.
Pretty much, yeah.
But what about those times when it's not the router itself, but something else on the network causing problems?
You're thinking like a true network detective.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes conflicts between devices can cause those intermittent dropouts. It could be something as simple as two devices having the same IP address. Imagine showing up to a party and realizing someone else is wearing the exact same outfit.
That would be awkward. So how do we avoid those Wi-Fi fashion faux pas?
Your router usually assigns IP addresses automatically using something called DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. But sometimes things get out of sync and you end up with conflicts. Checking your router's DHCP settings can often clear up these issues. And while you're at it, it's also a good idea to make sure your device's Wi-Fi drivers are up to date. Outdated drivers can sometimes lead to compatibility issues and those frustrating dropouts.
So it's like making sure everyone on the network is speaking the same language.
Exactly.
I'm starting to realize there's a lot more to managing a Wi-Fi network than I thought.
It can definitely seem overwhelming at times, but don't worry, we've got this. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of how wireless signals work to advanced security measures and troubleshooting tips. And remember, technology is always evolving, so staying curious and informed is key to keeping your Wi-Fi running smoothly.
It really is fascinating and a bit daunting, but thanks to your expertise, I feel much more confident in navigating the Wi-Fi world.
Glad to hear it. It's all about empowering yourself with knowledge.
Exactly. So before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something we haven't really talked about yet. We've delved into the technical side of Wi-Fi. But how is all this wireless technology changing the way we live and interact with the world?
That's a great point. I mean, just think about how much we rely on Wi-Fi every single day.
I know, right?
Connecting with friends and family, working remotely, streaming entertainment, even controlling our smart homes.
It's true,
It's
yeah.
woven into the fabric of our lives.
It's true. I can't even imagine life without Wi-Fi anymore. But it's not just about convenience, right? Wireless technology is also driving huge innovations in fields like healthcare, transportation, and education.
Absolutely. With the emergence of 5G and the Internet of Things, we're on the cusp of a truly connected world where billions of devices can communicate with each other seamlessly. Imagine doctors remotely monitoring patients' vital signs in real time, or self-driving cars navigating our roads, all thanks to the power of wireless technology.
It's mind-blowing to think about the possibilities. But with all this connectivity comes concerns about privacy and security, right? I mean, the more devices we have connected, the more vulnerable we become to hackers and data breaches.
That's a crucial consideration. As we embrace the benefits of wireless technology, we need to be equally vigilant about protecting our data and privacy. Strong passwords, robust encryption, and responsible online behavior are more important than ever.
For sure.
And as technology continues to evolve at a rapid pace, it's crucial to stay informed about the latest security threats and best practices.
It's a constant learning process, for sure. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today in our deep dive into wireless networking. We've explored how wireless signals travel, the different Wi-Fi standards and topologies, the importance of security, and even how to troubleshoot those pesky Wi-Fi woes.
We've definitely packed a lot into this deep dive.
We have. So for all of you listening, I hope this deep dive has demystified the world of Wi-Fi and equipped you with the knowledge to optimize your own wireless networks.
And remember, the world of technology is constantly evolving, so stay curious, keep exploring, and don't be afraid to experiment.
And if you ever find yourself struggling with a Wi-Fi problem, remember the troubleshooting tips we discussed today. You might be surprised at what you can solve on your own. But most importantly, enjoy the freedom and flexibility that wireless technology brings to your life. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into wireless networking. Until next time, stay connected.
And stay curious.